Alright, everybody. Well, welcome back. The good news is you are past the hardest part now of this chapter. If you've learned this material from number 53, number 54, that was yesterday. Today is number 55, actually, and it's mostly the same. Number 55 is mostly the same. The only difference we're going to see today is that A is a bigger number. Yesterday when we did this on 9.3, A was always 1. Today it's not. So everything else is the same. So here we go. We're going to take off where we left off yesterday. If you don't see that other one, the last one, number 54, make sure you go back and look at it because I go in quite a bit of detail on how to solve these. Now once again, we're going to be working with the factoring toolbox. And that factoring toolbox is basically 8 steps. Let's go through them real quick again. We're going to start here. We're going to go steps 1, 2, and 3. Step 4 says now go factoring by grouping. So you go back up here to factoring by grouping and do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to return up here factoring a trinomial of this form. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps really. Looks like 9 here, but this one is saying to go up above and follow the 5 steps. So we're going to follow these again. If you have this sheet, you're going to be benefiting by having it. I don't even mind if you use this on the test. You've got to be able to do these problems, though, however, okay? So let's go ahead and tackle this problem. So step 1 on factoring a trinomial is multiply A times C. Well, remember, A is his first term. There's A. There's B, and there's C. So A times C, well, 6 times 5 is 30. Now I'm playing the product sum game, step 2. What two numbers will give me 30 when I multiply and 17 when I add? Well, if I get 30 when I multiply, I could go 1 times 30. That doesn't give me 17. 2 times 15. Oh yeah, there's 17. By the way, you'll notice I'm going through these in order. Started with 1, then go to 2, then 3, and so forth. 2 times 15 is 30, and 2 plus 15 is 17. There's my combination. Now, I could keep going if I needed to, but I see now that this is it. I mean, I could go 3 times 10, and 5 times 6, but the only one that gives me a sum of 17 is this one. So I would just stop here and say, oh, there it is. Okay. Next step. Rewrite the trinomial splitting the middle term. So I'm copying this over, but I'm going to split 17 into 2x and 15x. Notice the x is coming along with it. I bring everything else straight down. That comes down, this came down, and these two split. All right. Now we're ready to go back up to factoring by grouping. So go up to 2c, number 1. Underline the two groups. What comes out of this first group? Well, it's not just x this time. 2x is coming out. I'm going to take out 2x. And what do I have as leftovers? I take out the greatest common factor of 2x, and what's left behind is 3x plus, well, I took all of that out. What do I have to put here? Well, you've got to put something, and it's not a 0. You're going to put a 1 here. 2x times 1 is 2x. So that's got to be a 1, not a 0. Okay, you got to have something there. You're taking out something out of each term. The only thing you're going to leave behind here is a 1. Okay. All right. Next step. We've taken the GCF out of the left group. We're going to copy the leftovers over here, and the leftovers are the things in parentheses. So I'm just bringing this over to the right. Don't think about it. Just bring it over there. And then I ask, what must have come out of this second group in order to give me these leftovers? Well, I can see that it's dividing by 5. So a 5 must have come out, a positive 5. Don't forget to write this plus sign here. 15x plus 5, that's right. As I distribute back in, I see I have the right numbers there. And then the final step is marry the two groups. So these two are going to hold hands. That's 2x plus 5 in parentheses. And these two shall become 1. Now, I haven't usually been checking these, but I'm going to check this one just to point out to you that we can always check using FOIL. Okay, we're going to FOIL this. FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, and last. Okay, 2x times 3x is my first terms. 2x and 3x is 6x squared. That's right. That's what we had at the original. Outer terms, 2x. Inner terms, 15x. Oh, those are the same as I had up here. And 5 times 1 is 5. And if I combine those middle terms, I get back to 17x. So we have the original problem here, and we just checked it. So this checked out. Now this problem is no different than the ones we did on the previous assignment, except there's a number out front that's bigger than 1. Let's try another one, a little harder one. All right, here we go. I'm going to take a times c, and I'm going to write that over here. A times c, 7 times 3 is 21. Then I'm going to play the product sum game. What two things will give me 21 when I multiply? I got to get 22 when I add. Well, 1, notice I'm starting with 1. 1 times 21 is 21, and if I add them, I get 22. Oh, I found it right away here. Okay, 3 and 7 would only give me a sum of 10, so that can't work. So my two numbers are 1 and 21. So we're going to split the middle term to 1x plus 21x. I just split the middle term. Now we're ready to factor by grouping. Underline the two groups. What has to come out of this group? Well, x comes out. That leaves me with 7x plus 1. Bring the leftovers onto the right. Don't think about it. And what must be divided by? Well, we must have divided by 3. It's 21 divided by 3, and 3 divided by 3 will give me this. So I had to divide by 3. So I'm going to have to put a positive 3 was the number we divided by. Marry the two pieces together. Marriage, marriage. Most people don't have too much trouble with these marriages once they get started. Okay, there you go. Let's look at another one, a little harder one. All right, now you notice the numbers are getting bigger here, and that's intentional. The process is all the same. The only hard part is that product sum game gets a little more challenging. We'll show you what that looks like when we get there. Here we go. A times C, 10 times 28. A times C, 10 times 28 is 280. What two numbers will give me 280? Now, I'm looking for two numbers that'll give me 280, but I have to get a negative sum. So it seems to me that if they're going to be a positive product and a negative sum, they both have to be negative numbers. Negative times negative will give me a positive 280, but a negative plus a negative will give me a negative 43. So the two numbers have to be negative. Okay, well now I'm going to go through the process, and I'm going to start with 1, and we're going to work through it. So here we go. Negative 1 times negative 280. Well, that's a sum of negative 281. That's not even close. 2 goes in. Negative 2 goes in. Negative 140 times. That's a sum of negative 142. I'm getting closer, but not there yet. Does 3 go in? Well, 3 won't go in this, and I know because the sum of 8 and 2 is 10. And remember, the divisibility by 3 trick says, well, if they don't add up to a multiple of 3, then 3 won't go in. So 3 won't go into this. But I can tell that 4 will, because 4 goes into 28 7 times. So negative 4 goes in 70 times, negative 70 times. Negative 4 times negative 70 is a positive 280. Well, now things are going to start getting challenging here. That's a sum of negative 74. I'm getting close. But here's one of the things you can do to kind of speed up your work. What if I made this number twice as big and this one half as big? Let's make this twice as big and call it negative 8, and make this half as big and call that negative 35. sometimes you can use this trick by doubling something and taking half of it. Now these two numbers have to be the same. They have to be 280 again, because I divided this one by 2, or multiplied this one by 2, and I divided this one by 2. These are the same, and in fact they are. -8, or just take 8 times 35, that's 40, 24, 20, yeah, 280, it's still 280. And now I can see that their sum is a -43. There's my two numbers right there. The hardest part about this is the product sum game. It takes a little more work figuring out what the two numbers in. So this idea of divisibility becomes a big issue as these numbers get bigger and bigger. Now the process is still the same at the end here. So we're going to take and copy the problem over and split that middle term into these two. Okay? The middle terms have to add up to -43, and they do. All right, factoring by grouping. I'm going to underline the two groups. Let's see, 2 comes out of both of these, and so does x. We're going to take out a 2x. That leaves me with 5x minus 4. Okay, we have bigger numbers here than we have had in the past. 10x squared minus 8x, that's right. Copy the leftovers over here, don't think about it. And what do you have to divide this by to get this? Well, 35 divided by 5 is 7, but it's a -35 divided by 5. This has got to be a -7. So -7 times 5 is a -35. -7 times -4 is 28. -7 is the right number for the middle. All right, now we're going to marry these pieces together. Those two are holding hands, and these two shall become one. You can FOIL this to check that this works. What I'm trying to point out here is that the numbers are bigger, the process is the same. Hardest part becomes over here, where you're trying to get these, figure out what the two numbers are in the product sum game. Try to work at it systematically, 1, 2, 4. I don't think 6 will go in. 5 does. We could have tried 5, and we could have tried, a couple other things, but that was just one little trick that I use sometimes. All right, let's do something a little different here. All right, let's take on this problem here. Now, I'm going to multiply A times C here, and I'm going to get a pretty big number. And if you remember from the last problem we did, when we have big numbers, it's a little harder to do. And so one of the things I want to try to make a good habit is to see if anything comes out of all of these. In fact, one of the steps on our toolbox is exactly that. You'll notice at the top of our toolbox, number 1 is take out the greatest common factor. I want to try to do that first before I do any of these other steps. And if I look at the problem initially and I see a greatest common factor, I want to take it out, because it's going to make my numbers smaller. Notice that all of these are divisible by 3. So we're going to pull out a 3, and we're left with this. Now these numbers are smaller. It should make our problem easier. I want to give you a little caution right here. The answer to this problem at the bottom has to include this 3. So I'm going to drag it down the page now. And I'm doing it now so I don't forget about it later. All right, this ought to be easier to factor now because all of our numbers are smaller. So here we go. A times C. 1 times 15 is 15. What two numbers will give me 15 when I multiply and 8 when I add? Well, I can see that that's got to be 3 times 5. A positive 3 times a positive 5. That gives me positive 15 and a sum of 8. So we'll split that middle term. And now we're ready to factor by grouping. Underline the two groups. Take out an x. We're going to leave behind x plus 3. Copy the leftovers. What had to come out? Well, this must have been divided by a positive 5. So my marriages are going to be x plus 5 and x plus 3. Now, because we're all forgetful, me too, I would have got to the end and I would have rejoiced and go, oh, look, I got the right answer here. But I would have forgot to bring that 3 down the page. And I would have lost a point because that 3 becomes a part of this problem. You see, to not have that 3, if I foiled this, I would not get that original problem. But if I foiled this, I would get this, and then I'd have to multiply it by 3 to get the original problem. So develop this habit of bringing that number down right away when you take it out so you don't forget about it. Okay? Let's do another one of these. All right, let's take a look at this one. I'm going to throw a curveball at you today because we haven't done this before, this part here. This is usually the hardest problem we have to do. And you're looking at me and going, well, look at how small those numbers are. Yeah, that's not the problem here. Let me show you where the problem's going to be. Let's tackle it the way we usually would. Okay, so here we go. A times C, 2 times a negative 2. A times C is a negative 4. What 2 numbers will give me negative 4 when I multiply and 5 when I add? Well, let's start making a list. Now, notice if I get a negative product, these 2 numbers would have to be different signs. Positive times a negative. Positive times a negative. And if you don't write that at the beginning here, you might mess up on this problem. Okay? So let's see what all the combinations are. Positive 1, negative 4. Their sum is not 5. Okay? How about a negative 1 and a positive 4? Well, their sum is 3. It's not 5. 2, negative 2 and a positive 2. Their sum is 0. That's not 5. And that's all the possibilities, I think, here. Right? And once I've examined all the possibilities, it's possible that there's no solution to this, that this is not factorable. And when something is not factorable, we just call it prime. Or you could just say not factorable. Now, if you didn't know that these signs were plus and minus, you might have added these 2 together and got 5. But remember, those signs have to be different here in order to get a negative. So be real careful when you put the signs down here that you got the right signs you're looking for. This number is not factorable. So that happens, going to happen every once in a while. And these are the hardest problems because usually people are scratching their head wondering, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Well, I didn't do anything wrong. It's just I didn't find a combination that was going to work. So it is prime, not factorable. Let's take a look at your homework for tonight. All right. So here's your assignment for tonight. It's number 56, page 498. We're going to come back to page 493 on the next assignment, but I've kind of skipped that for a moment. And make sure you practice these a lot. This is the hardest part of the chapter. Get yourself so you understand how to play that product sum game and follow all 8 of the steps here. All right, you have a good one. Talk to you later.